Okay, time to try something a little different on my channel. Um, Today I'm going to share with you my top 10 pieces of progressive rock music, along with several other pieces of music that were like almost there in my top 20 or very close. Um, I actually wrote an article on my blog listing my top 40, and it's that list has changed. It was a couple years ago when I wrote it, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some pieces. At the time when I wrote that, I did was not aware of some of the great music that Genesis wrote back in the 70s. I never listened to Genesis in the 70s, didn't even know about them until YouTube. So there's one piece I'm going to put in my top 10. Wasn't quite sure where to put it. But let me just go over some other pieces of music that I wanted to mention that aren't on my list. Another one is A Plague of Lighthouse Keepers by Vandergraaf Generator. I'm not a big fan of Vandergraaf Generator. They do have some interesting music, but if anything should be considered for my top 10 or top 20, it's A Plague of Lighthouse Keepers. They might have one or two other ones that should be considered, maybe more. I'm not really well aware of their music, but that piece is very, very cool. It's a 20-minute piece of music. If you've never heard A Plague of Lighthouse Keepers and you like prog rock, this is more like theater prog, theatrical prog, I would describe Vandergraaf as their music is very theatrical. I highly recommend you check that one out. Um, Another piece that was on my list, but I'm not including it. Well, it's no longer in my top 10. It was number 10. It's not Prog, though. I included it as my one exception to Prog, and that's a piece. It's a 9-minute instrumental by a band called the Dixie Dregs. And the piece is called I'm Freaking Out. It's on their album. I think the album is called Night of the Living Dregs. I could be wrong about that. It's just so cool, and it's a 9-minute instrumental piece, and I don't really know how to describe that genre of music. Funky country blues jazz rock thing, something that's how I would describe it. So if you've never heard of the Dixie Dregs, uh, I highly recommend that album, along with their album called Unsung Heroes. And I think Odyssey is the other album that I would highly recommend of their albums. They didn't have a lot of albums, but the guitar player went on to play for Deep Purple. I don't know if he's still with them now. Okay, one piece by Genesis. There were two that I considered for that belonged in my top 10. Initially, I liked this one better. The other one, when I first heard it, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I didn't get it. It had such an odd beginning. It sounded like it was in the middle of the piece, and I wasn't used to their style of music. I thought it was cool. I thought it was neat. I got it I got like half got it, but it didn't resonate with me like it does now because I've heard it maybe half a dozen times now. But the other piece, Firth of Fifth, that one really was like, wow. I'm listening to that going, okay, that's in my top 40. When I first listened to it after having written my article, and nobody's seen my article, it's on my blog, nobody sees it. But Firth of Fifth, my goodness, that's about it's a little over 9 minutes. I've got little notes here I'm looking at, so when you see me looking over here, I also have notes on my computer. I have my article that I'm going to reference. Firth of Fifth is just that. I preferred it over the other piece, which I'm sure you all know what the other piece is. Now, there may be other pieces by Genesis, and I'll mention the other piece when I get to it. There may be other pieces by Genesis that I should consider. I don't know a lot of their older music. I've listened to some, The Battle of Epping Forest, Several of their albums, I've listened to some of the music on the albums, and there's some really, really cool stuff on there. But I'm not a big Genesis fan. I don't know what it is about their music. I acknowledge they're great. I acknowledge some of the music is amazing, but some of it doesn't really resonate with me. And that might be why when I first heard the other piece, I wasn't as enamored with it as I am now. And now I like really, really am into it. Um, okay, some other pieces that didn't make my list. Roundabout by Yes. I have to mention that. By the way, my list, you have to, the piece of music to make my list has to be at least 8 minutes in length. I put that caveat in because if I didn't, I would have way too many pieces of music to consider, and it would be impossible to come up with 40 pieces. At the time, I was doing a top 40. And I didn't even realize for a very long time, I did not know that Roundabout was over 8 minutes long because I didn't have the album. I just heard it on the radio. And I thought it was a cool song, but I'd heard it so many times that when they played it in concert, like, oh yeah, Roundabout, we've heard it. Okay, whatever. Now, when you really hear the whole thing, it's like, man, that you could argue that is their best piece of music. It certainly probably belongs in their top 5 pieces of music. It's not their best. It's obvious which their best one is, but at least from my perspective. Yes, all music is subjective. Everyone has their own opinion. So, not everybody likes Roundabout. But for composition, it's hard to come up with a song that's better than Roundabout. So I have to acknowledge that. Another one by Yes is Yours is No Disgrace. Absolutely love that piece. It's over 9 minutes in length. I'm going to go through these a little quicker. Well, maybe I won't. I'm just trying to see what I wrote there, but that's okay. ELP is also one of my favorite progressive rock bands, and The Endless Enigma, coming in at like 10 minutes and 40 seconds roughly, is just an incredible piece of music. At the time I wrote my article, it was number 30 on my list. I don't know where it would come in now, but 30 is still great when you consider all the music that there is that's out there to pick from. It's like I said, I know I'm missing music that I still either haven't heard or just not thinking about. I love the album Tales from Topographic Oceans. So all 4 of those pieces made my top 40. They were basically 26 to 29. I kept all 4 of them together and just put them in the order from my favorite to least favorite. And I'm one of the oddballs. My favorite was The Ancient. Although I see that when I wrote this article, Ritual came in number 1. I'm not sure why that is. The Revealing Science of God was my 3rd favorite, and that's an incredible piece. And the Remembering, I think, is a wonderful piece of music. It's just it didn't resonate with me as much as the other 3. Starship Trooper by Yes is another great piece of music. At the time, it was 25th on my list. The 24th piece was We Have Heaven / South Side of the Sky. For me, both pieces should be played together, similar to like Heartbreaker and Living, Loving, Made by Led Zeppelin. If you haven't listened to both of them together, try it. We Have Heaven is like 1 minute and 30 seconds. South Side of the Sky just made my list. Originally, I thought it was just under 8 minutes. It turns out it's 8 minutes and 4 seconds, according to, I think, Wikipedia, which made me happy. But I was going to put it in regardless because I think I saw somewhere where it was 7 minutes and 58 seconds, and I think that's a YouTube video that somehow was under 8 minutes, which is odd. Another piece by Yes. Yes, I have a lot of pieces by Yes. They are my favorite progressive rock band. They are my number 1. My number 2 favorite progressive rock band is King Crimson. And then it's very close. There's ELP, there's Pink Floyd, and there's this band called UK. Now, there's also Rush, which I have to include, and then, of course, Genesis. Jethro Tull has to be considered. And there's others that I certainly will acknowledge. But this next one that was originally on my list at 22, I absolutely love this piece of music. It's 10 minutes, just over 10 minutes in length. And of all bands, it's by the, not pop rock, by the rock band Kansas. It's called Song for America. If you haven't heard Song for America, go listen to it. Listen to the studio version. It's just, everything about that piece resonated with me. I really wanted it to be in my top 20, and I was trying to find how to make it in my top 20. And it came in 22nd. In 21st is, I think this is my favorite piece by Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Trilogy. It's listed, I've got it here at 8 minutes and 54 seconds. That is my favorite album by ELP, and Trilogy is my favorite piece of music. Yes, Carnival 9 is phenomenal. It's incredible. It didn't make my list. And neither did Echoes by Pink Floyd. Both are great. I'm not denying that they aren't great. They are, and maybe they belong in my top 40. But lists are subjective. My list could change next year. And when I made this list, it was really about, I looked at it this way. If I could only listen to one more piece of music, and my choices were, and I just took whatever songs I'm looking at. So in this case, Trilogy or Song for America. I can only listen to one more, one time, and that's it. I would take Trilogy. It was really, really close. I would be happy with Song for America. But I looked at it like that, and I could feel differently next week. You know, it doesn't, the list really isn't important, more as all that's on your list and what songs do you like in general. We're going to all disagree about which song is better. Everyone's going to have a different opinion on that. Okay, number 20 at the time, and again, this would be different if I did it again, is by Rush. And while Rush isn't really a progressive rock band, they were. They were in the 70s, and then they kind of really weren't anymore. But that happened to Genesis too. Genesis went popular, which I can't blame them. But La Via Strangiato, my goodness, 9.5 minute piece. If you don't know the not the history, what that song is about, I won't spoil your fun. Google it. Google why that piece was written, what it's all about. I don't want to spoil anything for you. It's something. Okay. When it came to my top 10, there were two pieces by Pink Floyd that I was going back and forth with. Initially, it didn't take long for me. At first, I wasn't going back and forth with it. It was going to be in my top 10, and the other one wasn't. The other one ended up being at number 19. But now, I'm not sure which one I like better. Like right now, if I could only listen to one of them, I think it would still be the one that's in my top 10. But the other one is Sheep. 10 minutes, I've got it here, is 10 minutes and 20 seconds. Sheep by Pink Floyd might be their best piece of music they ever wrote. It's just so phenomenal. I'm sure, well, you may not know what the other one is. We'll get to that in a little bit. And yeah, I'm saying my top 10, but I'm giving you what was in my top 20 plus, and I'm going over them. So I guess it's whatever. I'm calling this my top 10. I'm just giving you the other pieces that were considered that were like right after the top 10. Another piece by Rush, which I put the two pieces together, which is Cygnus X1. There's book 1 and book 2. Book 1 is called The Voyage. Book 2 is called Hemispheres. The Voyage is 10.5 minutes. Hemispheres is 18 minutes. Phenomenal piece of music. Is not my number 1 piece by Rush. I think it's my number 2 piece, second favorite piece of music by them. And again, it's very, very close. All of these are very, very close. That's why I say this order could vary very easily. with time. Um, okay, I mentioned UK. If you have not heard the band UK and you like progressive rock, you have not heard one of the greatest progressive rock albums of all time. Um, this piece that was initially on my list at number 17 is still not in my top 10. And it's on their second album, which isn't as good as their first album, in my opinion. But it is their best piece on that album, and it's called Carrying No Cross. It's listed at 12 minutes and 20 seconds. Again, if you are a fan of progressive rock, go listen to that piece. That piece, I have an opinion about why they wrote it. What the bass player and vocalist of UK was formerly of King Crimson. John Wetton was his name. Great musician. He's recently passed away. I think I know what he was trying to do with that piece, and I'll mention that. Well, I won't. Yeah, no, I'll mention it. I'll mention it when we get to the piece that is in my top 10. And I think he was trying to write his version of that piece. I think there's a similar style of the two pieces of music. They're similar in length. That one's 12:20. Okay, this piece, I question how this isn't in my top 10 pieces of music. I actually say to myself, really? Seriously? This isn't in your top 10 pieces of progressive rock? The Gates of Delirium by Yes is 21 minutes and 46 seconds of mind-blowing, incredible music. Mind-blowing music? I guess I can just call it that. It's just an unreal piece of music. Some people consider it better than Close to the Edge. And that is just the fact that it's in the discussion tells me that Yes achieved their goal. They wanted to make another album that was as good as Close to the Edge, and the album is Relayer. And the other song that's on there that was that I put even higher than Gates of Delirium is Sound Chaser. Sound Chaser is kind of almost like an avant-garde jazz prog piece of music. It's the most wild piece, one of the most wild pieces of music I've ever heard. And again, not in my top 10. UK had this other piece, which I can easily make the argument, and I'm sure some of you will say this is their best piece. It's my second favorite. It's called Nevermore, 8 minutes and 9 seconds. I might change my opinion on that at some point and say, I think Nevermore might be their best piece. It is phenomenal, no doubt about it. At the time, it was number 15 on my list. The next one on my list was Siberian Kotru by Yes, off the Close to the Edge album, which, there's nothing that needs to be said about Siberian Kotru. It's a phenomenal piece of music. And the other piece from Close to the Edge, And You and I, is one of the greatest pieces of music I've ever heard. It's 10 minutes, basically, 10 minutes in length. More Yes, Heart of the Sunrise. This, at the time, was number 11 on my list, and I had a hard time not putting it in my top 10, but that's where it ended up. Okay. I don't know if I've missed anything. I'm trying to think things that I want to mention. There's a great piece of music that did make my top 40 by King Crimson. It's long. It's over 20 minutes long. It's off their album called Lizard. And I think it's just referred to as the Lizard Suite. I'm not sure if that's the actual title of the song, but I call it the Lizard Suite. Incredible piece of music. I highly recommend you go listen to that if you've never heard the Lizard Suite by King Crimson. I wanted to mention that. Okay, at number 10, and some of you will probably disagree with this. Again, this is very hard to lock these all in. Where do you put them? But it affected me the most when I first heard it. I had no idea who this band was. I'd never heard of them. I heard it in high school. The music blew my mind, and I bought the album and went home and listened to it and was just, I don't even know. I don't even remember my feelings other than I was blown away. And that's 2112 by Rush. It's over 20 minutes long. That was a hallmark album for them. Very interesting backstory on that album. Why they wrote what they wrote, a 20-minute piece of music when they were being told by the record company, you need to write a hit. And instead they went, okay, here's a 20-minute piece of music. And it became a hit. So it's amazing. So that's number 10. Number 9, and again, some people think this is the greatest piece of music by Yes. It's my second favorite piece by Yes. I'm sure you know what the first one is. It's kind of obvious. But Awaken, 15 minutes and 26 seconds long. What did someone say? It was, I had a spiritual experience when I first listened to Awaken. I became spiritually enlightened when I listened to Awaken. It's just an incredible piece of music. Okay, number 8 is my favorite Pink Floyd piece of music. I don't like calling these songs because they're really not songs. They're pieces of music. All songs are pieces of music. All pieces of music aren't songs, I think is how I tend to say it. Dogs comes in at 17 minutes and 4 seconds. And again, maybe Sheep is better than Dogs. I'm so torn when I go back and forth with these pieces, but Dogs blew my mind when I heard synthesized dogs barking. I just fell in love, and that's why it's remained my favorite piece by Pink Floyd. It's just incredible. It's just phenomenal when I heard those dogs barking. But Sheep is incredible too. So that was number 8. If I said wrong, I've got a different number next to these right now because I have one new piece in my top 10. Okay, number 7 is my favorite piece by UK. It's 13 minutes in length. It is a 3-part suite, although on the album it's listed as 3 separate songs, but they all connect. There's no break in the album. They all flow, and it's called In the Dead of Night. It features one of the greatest guitar solos in progressive rock history. Bill Bruford said about Alan Holdsworth's solo, which begins, I think, at the 3:08 mark of the song. He said, "It remains one of the most perfectly formed, intelligently paced, and brilliantly executed 2 minutes of liquid guitar bliss you are ever likely to hear." That perfectly summarizes and captures that guitar solo by Alan Holdsworth. It's phenomenal. But Alan doesn't like to play the same thing over and over again, which is why he never stayed with bands very long, and he kept doing different things. And he didn't like to play the same thing over and over again, which is why a lot of people don't even know who he is. Okay, so now that was number 7. Number 6 might also surprise you because it is by Kansas. And again, I'm not a huge Kansas fan. I really enjoy Carry On Wayward Son. Great song. I kind of don't consider that progressive rock. It's kind of in the middle between progressive rock and rock. It's kind of maybe it's a blend. I really don't know. But my favorite piece by Kansas is Magnum Opus. Now, the funny thing about this piece of music, it's 8 minutes and 25 seconds, if you don't know. The album is called Left Overture. I'm sure you've seen the album cover. This piece is called Magnum Opus, which you might not know. And I only learned this through, reading it somewhere, I forget. The album was originally called Magnum Opus. This was going to be their great work. And this song was called Left Overture because, and I don't know if I wrote it here, well, it was literally, I don't have it really written out right here. It was literally leftover pieces of music that they hadn't used, and they took all these pieces that were left out and put them together and created this piece called Left Overture. That's what it was called. And for whatever reason, maybe it was because Left Overture looked better on the album cover than Magnum Opus. They switched it. So the album became Left Overture and the piece became Magnum Opus, which I don't know if they really considered this to be their great work, but it's my favorite piece by them, so I guess it kind of worked. Again, if you haven't heard Magnum Opus, oh my God, just be ready for it, because it's not like their typical music. It's quite different. Okay, number 5. The piece by Genesis, Supper's Ready. I'm sure you knew that I was referring to Supper's Ready. I don't know what it was about the first time I heard it. Like I said, I thought it was cool. I didn't put it in my top 40. I listened to it, but I didn't put it in my top 40 also because I had never really heard it. I was hearing it for the first time. Same with Echoes by Pink Floyd. And I'm like, I can't put these in my top 40 because I haven't heard them enough. My top 40 was based on my love for music, and these were my favorites. So Echoes, Supper's Ready, Firth the Fifth, now I was listening to them, but it was early on, and I just couldn't I couldn't justify putting them in the top 40. But now Supper's Ready, for the moment, I just put it at number 5. I don't know if that's right for me or not. As I look at it, I'm still confused by that. But it's the weirdest intro, the weirdest way a song starts. It literally sounds like it's right in the music, right in the middle of the song. It just starts, and it doesn't have a beginning. It's like, did we miss a couple minutes? What happened here? Really, really bizarre. But I guess that's the greatness of Peter Gabriel, if I had to guess. Okay. So that leaves my top 4. Number 1 is Close to the Edge by Yes. You all know that. I don't need to create any suspense here. The next 3 pieces, numbers 4, 3, and 2, are all by King Crimson. And yet I say King Crimson is my second favorite band, yet they occupy the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd piece numbers on my list. The number 4 is my one exception to my 8-minute rule, because it is the proggiest of all prog music ever written. It's 7 minutes and 24 seconds, so pretty close. And there was no way I could not include it, because it is one of the greatest pieces of music ever written, and that's 21st Century Schizoid Man by King Crimson. First time I heard this, my friend in high school, I forget if he gave me that album. The first album he gave me was Starless and Bible Black by King Crimson. The first King Crimson song I ever heard was The Great Deceiver. Interesting music. Kind of liked it. But when I heard 21st Century Schizoid Man, I couldn't believe what I was listening to. It was just unreal. Okay, so number 3 and number 2. What are, in my opinion, the 2 greatest pieces of music by King Crimson? And arguably, I could make a case that either one of these could be number 1 over Close to the Edge. That's how close these are for me. So it's just, well, I'll just say it. Number 3 is 12 minutes and 18 seconds, and it's called Starless, off their album Red. And this is the piece that I think when John Wetton and Eddie Jobson, I think, co-wrote Carrying No Cross on their UK album, I think he was trying to create another Starless. And I think he came pretty close. Now, if you disagree with me on that, feel free to leave a comment and tell me what you think. But Starless, when I first listened to Starless, and at some point in the song, Robert Fripp starts playing one note. And I'm like, really? He's just playing one note over and over. And the time signature is some weird 11/8 or 13/4, or I don't even know what it is. I may have written it down here. 13/8. I said I think it's 13/8, but I'm not sure about that. Crazy time signature, and he just keeps repeating this one note. Eventually the note goes up, and eventually there's this slow build to absolute chaos, and it just blew my mind. The fact that Fripp could play this one note over and over again and keep my attention. Incredible. So that brings me to number 2, and I don't know how many of you already know. Let me know in the comments if you already know which piece I'm going to mention. But when I first made a list years ago, before I made the list that's on my blog, I made a top 25 list, and Close to the Edge was going to be number 1. Until I got to number 2, which was going to be this piece, and I went to type it, and something stopped me, and I was sitting there going, why am I hesitating on this? And I think it's because I had been listening to this piece recently, and something told me that this piece was better. And I ended up putting this piece number 1 when I wrote that article. And I said something like, it wouldn't let me put it at number 2. It refused to be put at number 2. That this was the greatest piece of music ever written. Now, I'm not including the masters, Bach, Moonlight Sonata, Rhapsody in Blue, Mozart stuff, Chopin, I forget how you pronounce his name. I'm not saying these things are necessarily better than them, but maybe I can make the argument. But this piece is 8 minutes and 49 seconds, and it's called Epitaph. And to me, this is the perfect piece of music. When I listen to it intently and closely, it just captured me in a way that's hard to describe. And I couldn't believe it ended up being number 1. Now it's back to number 2 because Close to the Edge just said, we're done here. You're not putting anything above us ever again. I know I sound a little weird the way I'm saying that, but it's thoughts in my head when I think about this music. Is there anything I wanted to say about Epitaph other than what I've said? Not really. Let me just read you 2 quotes about Close to the Edge. By the way, for those who don't know, Close to the Edge is about 18 and a half minutes long. Ryan Reed said this about Close to the Edge. Close to the Edge is symphonic, not in instrumentation, but in overall structure. Throughout 4 breathtaking movements, Yes introduce and recapitulate melodic themes, change tempos and keys, and approach their instruments, parentheses, as they usually do, with a studiousness largely reserved for an orchestral setting. But this piece is never stuffy. In fact, it's the most nakedly emotional song in their catalog. Anderson's vocal in the I Get Up, I Get Down section, building from hoarse low notes to a full-throated melismatic peak, taps into a primal spirituality amplified by the wheeze of Wakeman's church organ. It's Prog perfection. That's a pretty cool quote. Here's one more that's shorter by someone named Matt Barnhill. It is the centerpiece of the greatest album of all time, Prog or otherwise. It is one of the best examples of rock musicians adopting symphonic ideals and really making it work naturally. It is incredibly emotional and is really a timeless work of art that can stand on its own. That's really cool. That's very cool. If you have never, if you like watching reactions, I like watching reactions to Close to the Edge. I've watched a lot of reactions to a lot of music. I recommend you, if you'd like to watch a great reaction to Close to the Edge, if you're familiar with the YouTube channel Jamel, aka Jamal, he's got almost 1 million subscribers now. Really, really nice guy. Love to meet him. I think he's like 6 feet 7 inches tall. big, tall, black guy. I think his wife is I don't know if she's short, but she's an Asian one. And just watching what this music did to him, he proclaimed after listening to it, and he had listened to tons of music, that was the greatest piece of music he'd ever heard. And I don't think anything's past that. Supper's Ready came close for him. He said, "Oh my God, this might challenge Close to the Edge," as he was listening to Supper's Ready. But he was just blown away, and I think you'll enjoy watching Jamel react to it. Very, very cool reaction. I also loved his reaction to Grand Funk Railroad's live performance of Inside Looking Out from 1969. That's one of my favorite pieces of music. Glad I mentioned it, even though it's not Prog. Go watch Jamel react to that. One of the best reactions to that piece. That might be the best reaction on YouTube to that piece of music. Just an incredible performance by three guys. So that's my list. What do you think? What am I missing? What pieces would you put in your top 10? What pieces would be in the list above the top 10 that I listed all those songs? What piece am I not listing that I should at least consider? I've mentioned Carnival and Echoes. I'm sure there's 100 pieces of music that I could easily consider to be in my top 40, easily. So it's very difficult to really sort through these and pick which one is my favorite, especially since a year from now or 6 months from now or 1 month from now or 1 week from now, that list could change. So this is my list at the present moment. I do want to hear what you guys think about it and what songs you would have included and what songs you would not have included. Feel free to, let's have a discussion. If any of you like Dungeons and Dragons, I wrote a D&D story. I narrated it on my channel. You can listen to it on my channel by going to playlist and the one that says Forestera's Fate. There's one that says excerpts from Forestera. Those are little teasers in the story that I'm making. I'm in the process of making one at a time to try to generate interest in the story. I have not been able to get people to listen to my story because it's hard. It's hard to get people to listen. I don't have 50,000 subscribers. But if you like D&D, give it a listen. I do play a little piano on my channel. I call them piano improvisations. On this, hopefully that's in the thing. That's in the picture there. I just held it up so you can see. A couple times I've been on a real piano, which was really cool. I do sing a little. I'm a poor man, poor man's John Anderson. I can't sing like John Anderson, but he is my inspiration for vocals. So I try to, but yeah, no. I sounded pretty good on, I sang From the Beginning, just the first part of it by ELP, and people said I sounded really good on that one. So there's one you could listen to on my channel and let me know what you think. Some I didn't sound all that good. I was like, okay, I do have other D&D stuff on my channel, and a couple more things I want to mention to you guys. If you like art, look on my channel about my father's art. His name was Tristan Meineke. If you just type it in, it'll come up, and you can look at that video. You might enjoy that. And my mother was on television in Chicago back in the 50s. She had a children's television show that nobody knows about because it's back in the 50s called The Playhouse. I made a video about her as well on my YouTube channel that you might enjoy looking at, especially if you like historical things involving Chicago and television and stuff like that. She was on I grew up watching Captain Kangaroo, Ray Rayner, Romper Room. She was on before them. I never saw her show, never once. And I don't think there's any film of the show. I think it was all done live. We've tried to find film. We've never been able to. So I knew nothing about it growing up because she was no longer doing television when I was born. I was born in 1962. The show stopped somewhere in the 50s. But you might enjoy that. There's a couple other things on my channel. I don't do one specific thing on my channel. I try to do a variety of stuff. I don't feel any need to do multiple channels. I'm not doing this to make money. You need over 1,000 subscribers before you can even try to make money on YouTube. So I'm nowhere near even considering it. I don't even use a video editor. I need to learn how to use a video editor. If anyone in Chicago can come over and show me how to use a video editor, leave a comment. Let me know, and you can help me, show me how to do that, because I'd like to make my videos a little better if I can. Especially my story. My story reads like a book on tape, except for the introductory video. It's all a blank screen, which I don't mind because I'd rather you visualize it for yourself. That's what D&D is supposed to be anyway, your imagination. But the introductory video, I do include pics that I used holding my phone. I just held my phone up and just reading while it was really funny. It's very amateurishly done, but I don't mind that. I don't mind that it's not professional. So that's all. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to my list. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Disagree, agree, doesn't matter. Music is subjective. Don't worry about what somebody says. I heard a Yes fan say he didn't even like Close to the Edge, and he's a Yes fan. He said, I wouldn't even put it in my top 10. He said there was nothing original about it other than the bird sounds in the beginning. And I went, wait, what? Nothing original about Close to the Edge. He's a big Yes fan. He loves Awaken. This is some guy I was talking with on Facebook. I'm no longer talking to the guy because I thought the guy was like, okay, whatever. Boy, yeah, all music is subjective. There's the proof right there. Yes fans who don't like Close to the Edge. Okay. That was one of the weirdest conversations I had ever had with a guy. I was trying to just listen. I was like, okay, I just want to hear why you think what you think. And I feel that way about Dungeons and Dragons. People have so many different opinions about Dungeons and Dragons. And it's like, my goodness, it's fine. It doesn't matter. It's your opinion. It's actually nice that we all disagree. If you think about it, it makes for a much more interesting reality that we live in, that we all disagree. The problem is our disagreements end up boiling over into all kinds of silly arguments that people get into, and there's no need for that. We can discuss our differences and our disagreements respectfully. Why can't we do that? I don't get why people want to get angry. But then again, I've done it in the past. I got mad at somebody. I'm like, why did I get mad? They disagree with me. It doesn't matter. There's no reason to get mad. All right, I've rambled on enough. Hope this video will work. If it seems decent enough, I'll post it, and hope that you guys like it. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.